What's up, North County? I'm your host, Randy Doty, and today we have a special guest. We have District 1 Supervisor John Peschong in studio with us to talk about all things in the county.
All things North County.
North County, absolutely. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you came on because, like I said, I've been talking about you all week long. So everybody talks about you, of course.
No,
you know.
I hope not.
So John, tell me a little bit about John. I mean, we can get into all the good stuff, but I mean, tell me how. You're here. Were you born native here?
I'm actually a third generation Californian, but I'm not from here originally. I've been here about 25 years. I'm from Los Angeles originally, so I'm one of those.
Okay.
Moved up here. My wife and I got married out in Shandon at a Judge Clark's chapel on the hill out there.
Oh, nice.
And we moved up here. My parents moved up here a number of years ago, and they've since passed away. But my mom passed away probably 30 years ago, and so we made the decision when we were first married to move up here and raise our family up here. So we came up to Templeton, and we've raised two children here. I think you've interviewed actually one of them.
Oh, yeah,
Johnny.
Everybody knows Johnny.
So
I think all the other football teams know Johnny too.
They do. And then my daughter, who's in her fourth year in college, and so we've raised our family here. And I got elected about 8 years ago to the Board of Supervisors. I ran that race. I ran against three other worthy opponents and was able to come in first place there. And so I've served for the last 8 years as the District 1 Supervisor, which includes Templeton, Paso, San Miguel, all of the Adelaide area, Lake Nacimiento, and then all the way out to the Kern County line. So that includes Shandon. And then to the Monterey County line, a little bit of Kings County line, but that's the northern part of the county. We are the North County, and that's the first district.
Very cool. So prior to 8 years ago, what did you do before that?
So I've been a small business person. I've owned a number of small businesses around the country, but in this particular instance, the one that I founded in 2003 was Meridian Pacific is the name of the company. It's a public affairs company, and we do some campaign work across the globe. And then in addition to that, before that, I was in politics. I was working behind the scenes on campaigns. I ran a number of campaigns for governors around the country, Nebraska, Idaho, and also in Hawaii. Linda Lingle's campaign ran her campaigns, and she was the governor of Hawaii for 8 years. Before that, going way back, as I said, I'm a graduate of Los Angeles Unified School District, so if I say something out of place or I can't spell, you'll understand the reason why. A graduate of Loyola Marymount University down in Los Angeles. Come from, as I said, my father and my grandfather were also from Los Angeles. And before that, the first job out of college, actually, I went to Washington, D.C. I worked at the White House for a number of years for President Reagan.
No kidding.
So that's my kind of give you my background. But I was in Republican Party politics for a long time, working for the Republican National Committee and different organizations. Worked for Senator John McCain for a while in his presidential campaign, and also worked for George W. Bush.
Wow. But you're also, kind of have some cattle background and whatnot as well, too.
Well, we do. We've been involved once we moved up here, we got really involved with my daughter in 4-H, Creston 4-H. Shout out to Creston 4-H, great organization with Tom Bordenaro. We do have some cattle on our property. They're not mine. Rex Swan is running some cattle on our property.
Presidents we've had.
I really enjoyed working for him. I did a lot of, at the time, radio and TV, so that's why I'm fascinated by your great studio here. But we did the radio addresses every Saturday, either at the White House in the Oval Office or Camp David, and then produced and helped produce a lot of videos. We did a lot of videos at that time, so if the president couldn't go to an event someplace in America, he would send a video of him congratulating the Kiwanis Club of Greater Des Moines, for their 100th anniversary kind of thing. And so we did those. Those were 2 or 3 minute videos we'd send out, and actually video cartridges, which nowadays nobody knows what they were, but you probably remember. We used to send those out, and So we did a lot of that, and then public speeches. I did traveled a little bit. I remember doing one speech at the United Nations in New York with him and helping on that. So I was a young kid, didn't have any experience. It's not like I was the kid that was the brilliant person there, but I was part of it, part of the team, and we made things work, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from him on the way you approach people, you talk to people, and how you have empathy for people.
Wow, that's awesome. Were your parents in politics as well?
They were not. So my dad was vice president of Merrill Lynch. He actually worked on Hollywood Boulevard for 30 years with Merrill Lynch as a financial advisor and then a vice president. And my mom, she volunteered a lot growing up, and then she also did some work with English as a second language in the Los Angeles Unified School System.
And John, when you say Los Angeles, what part of Los Angeles was that?
Mostly San Fernando Valley. I was actually born in Santa Monica and lived over in the Palisades for my first years in life, and then we moved over to the San Fernando Valley. So Tarzana, Woodland Hills. Went to William Howard Taft High School, which is still in existence in Woodland Hills, California.
It's so funny because you look back on the Los Angeles area. I mean, obviously the rap now is get out of L.A., but back then it used to be kind of a high district. I mean, not just LA, and I mean, you got Inglewood, you got Compton. My grandfather was the mayor of Compton.
He was. That is outstanding.
Obviously this is back in the the 30s and 40s, back when it was like something, to be in Compton. Of course now you don't want to be a mayor of anything in Compton.
It's a tough town. It's a tough town to probably lead. My assumption is, but some of those towns too, and having gone to Loyola Marymount, which is right around the corner from there, from Inglewood, and those, they are coming back. Those communities are coming back. But I look at the news out of Oakland, over the last few days where they're shutting down. The only time In-N-Out Burger has actually shut a restaurant down is they're shutting the one down in Oakland because it's so bad right now, because they ended up, the city council and ended up basically cutting the budget back of the police and public safety, and so the city has really fallen on some hard times. My sister recently retired from the Oakland Housing Authority, so I'm pretty familiar with that area, and it's a tough place. It's a tough place when you don't have control of kind of some of the bad things that are going on in your community.
What's going to happen? Because obviously the Raiders took off.
Yeah.
You got
the A's are leaving.
Right.
In-N-Out Burger closed.
Right.
I mean, it's the same thing that's going on with San Francisco right now. You're losing a lot of your taxable, from a public safety or public service standpoint, you're losing a lot of your taxable income for the organization that's running everything. So that would be the police and fire. They're usually public safety is the number one budget line in any city and any county in California. And so when you lose taxpayers, or you lose an organization or company that's paying taxes, that's usually the first group of people public safety feels the heat.
Do you have, I mean, not I shouldn't say do you, because I know you do, but communication and talk with obviously our government of California, governor. I mean, you have communication.
We
with
do.
These
We
guys,
talk
right?
to the state government all the time. I was just at a rural county representatives of California, which I get to serve as the delegate on, a meeting, and they had Wade Crowfoot, who's natural resources director. And so I talk to them all the time about the things that they're doing. They're in a really tough position right now because they have to figure out how to balance a budget that's now $68 billion in deficit. And so there's going to be some changes in state government. The state government went from a $100 billion surplus to a $68 billion deficit. That's a really tough position to be in. So I don't envy their job this next year of the programs they're going to have to cut, but they're going to have to cut. And I don't, I always say this at county board meetings is, if you want me to find the programs to cut, I'm happy to do that. So, because there are programs that we run, there are programs that states run, the programs that the federal government run that do not work. And we need to find those programs and then cut those programs back and find programs that work. And a lot of this has been to the discussion around homelessness in California. The homelessness problem that we're finding right now, we have in our county, we have about sorry. We have, in the state of California, we have about 160,000 homeless people that we're trying to help right now. Many of them are addicted to methamphetamines or fentanyl or whatever the drug would be, or they have a mental health crisis. And I can't really tell what came first, the drug addiction or the mental health, but we have services available to them. A lot of times they don't want to take up on the services. They have to say, I'm ready to be able to get clean and sober, or I'm ready to check myself into a mental health clinic and be able to get back on my meds and be able to make rational decisions. But when you spend that kind of money, when you're spending $12 billion a year on 160,000 people in the state of California, of course there's going to be programs that don't work. We need to figure out what those programs are, fix them, or stop them and find programs that do work to get more people off the streets and off of drugs, which is a big one for me. Our family, we had our nephew, Jack, he was a Cuesta College student who got addicted to heroin and died of a heroin overdose.
Oh,
and
sorry
so
to hear that.
it's felt in every family. Drug addiction is felt in every family right now, and it's been really tough.
So John, obviously, we're kind of just free falling here and talking things, but which is awesome. Obviously homelessness is a real big, especially here, in the North County.
Yes.
But and it almost seems like, ECHO does a great job. ECHO does a great job, going down there and housing them, getting them, educated and, helping them on their way. But you mentioned as far as the ones that don't want that help, but yet it's almost like, for me, when you see the tents on the side and stuff like that, it's like they have more, the homeless has more jurisdiction, so to speak, or rights than say, going and riding your dirt bike down in the river, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And it's like, and I think that's where the big complaint is. It's like, you have all these, tents and whatnot down in the area, but yet when you go down there and have, good family pastime, cops get called and, you're told to vacate. So it's like, where's the balance come from?
It's a great question. And a lot of times this has to do with a court case that the Ninth Circuit ruled on, which is called Martin versus Boise, which says that you cannot remove somebody or to ask somebody to leave a public area without a facility for them to go to. So finally, after I don't know how many years, it's been 15, 20 years of Martin versus Boise, the state of California is actually appealing that ruling to try to be able to stop it so they can take people that are suffering, let's say, a mental health crisis and be able to get them into therapy. The other one, too, that I think is going to be very helpful to this, and I have my differences with Governor Newsom. I do, and not just political issues, but some of the programs that he highlights and focuses on. But he does have a program that I think is going to be very beneficial to our community and also to people that are living, let's say, in the riverbed, which is Care Court. And what this will do is be court-mandated services for people that just can't take care of themselves. So they can if they're having a mental health crisis or they're so, out there on narcotics, and they're so addicted that they can't make rational decisions, we can remove them from that and then have the court system oversee their rehab. Detox sometimes we actually have a detox center now, which is something I voted for years ago here. It's based down at 40 Prado, and it's a detox center for our county folks that we could put people in to be able to get them off medically supervised so they could get them off drugs, and then they can make rational decisions. And the Care Court system has been, they did a pilot program in Monterey County, and it appears to have worked. The results after the first couple of years have been pretty good. And I think once that's deployed here in our county, we'll be able to kind of fix some of the hardcore problems that we have with some of the people that are living. Now, I'll tell you, ECHO has done an exceptional job. They did open the shelter up in Paso Robles. I thought they've done, so far, I think they've placed over 200 people and families in permanent housing, which has been great. They have a 90-day program where they're working on people to get them out of that. But I see it too because one of my big fears, and you probably have heard about this, up in Paso Robles along the river there, as you're about to get off onto the 46 East, there's no fence between the river and the freeway. And I've almost hit somebody about a month and a half ago, about 10 o'clock at night, coming down the 101 freeway, who was running across the freeway to get over to the other side. And we've got to be able to make sure that those folks aren't living there along that riverbed, that they have access to services, and we get them the help that they need to be able to get better. Because I have met, a lot of former homeless people, and once they actually buy into the program, like any addict would, anybody who's addicted to anything, or once they start to work the program, they can make rational decisions and they can get their lives back together.
Because it seems like it's not a specific stereotype of people that are, it's from young to old, of course, Larry, which is he's been around in the river for 20, 30 years
Yes.
that I know of.
Yep.
And he's just very content, and he's not, I don't think he's drug or anything. He's just, that's what he prefers.
He prefers. And that's the thing is too, during the big rains we had last year, I saw 4 or 5 guys, and mostly they're men, not women, in the riverbed. And we just did a count. We don't have the numbers yet, but so we'll have a pretty good feel for the money that we're spending, whether it's actually making an impact or not. And if it's not, we need to find some new programs that will make a difference. But like Larry, who you just talked about, he's very content down there. He's on his own. We have to incentivize it enough where he will say, okay, you know what, I'll get into some permanent housing. I'll get out of the riverbed, because it's a public safety issue. When during the torrential rains last year, I saw a number of people, young men, carrying their propane tanks out of the riverbed and putting them on higher ground, which they're either using them for a few things. Some people tell you they're using for cooking or they're for heat. I would actually argue that there's a number of people that are cooking them to manufacture methamphetamines down there. And I know that's for a fact, because you will see a lot of the containers of propane and butane and things like that on the big rains washing all the way up the river to Monterey. So It's been, it's one of the toughest things that this job as county supervisor is dealing with, that and being able to help these folks. And a lot of times, because of the way the law is structured, we can't do stuff for them. We can't ask them to leave. We can't, unless we have a place for it. But a lot of times they want to stay down there. They like the sense of community down there. If you go underneath the bridge, the 46 East Bridge, you'll see a community down there. So it's kind of trying to figure out a best way to be able to get them out. And I still will tell you that I believe the people that I run into, 80% of them are suffering from some sort of mental health issue or addiction. I think it's the rare one, like you just stated, because I would agree with you on Larry, that's his freedom, right? That's his belief in freedom.
Do you ever think, like, when you try to talk to these people, like when you're given, they're almost combative to where they look at you as an authority trying to take that, that, I guess, freedom or substance abuse, away from them. Mm-hmm. And so how do you combat that?
And that's the toughest part. That's why the numbers don't move right now, because we don't have the tools to be able to say to, you're not making rational decisions by, your body's falling apart on us. We can see that. You must be in a lot of pain. You're self-medicating, you're doing some sort of narcotic or drug, and we need to step in to be able to get you, actually to a point where you can make rational decisions, and you can further yourself. You can hopefully come back from it. Because a lot of times they're younger people. I will tell you that the ones that I've seen in the riverbed, the folks that I've seen, they tend to be 18 to 30-year-old men. And after 30, we've had a lot of them overdose and die down in the riverbed. Here in North County, and it's the same thing down in San Luis. They find a lot of homeless people pass away. We had a program that we set up 2 years ago that has failed, and we're in the process of shutting it down, which is the safe parking. So we moved people that were living out of their cars or motorhomes down the streets into a safe parking area, and it basically turned into an open air drug market. We had 4 fentanyl deaths of people that were there. There was 100, I think we moved 100 people in. Then we had 4 people who died of fentanyl. We had actually a fentanyl dealer that was living there, supplying them all, and then started supplying the community down in San Luis Obispo. And so we're in the process. We just got sued by a number of the residents that don't want to leave, but it ended up being a party every night down there.
You're getting sued by the homeless residents that don't want to leave?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not one thing. It's not that I can really talk about it a lot, but they filed a federal lawsuit, and so it's going to be litigated in court. And it's to the point too. Once again, I tell you, 4 people died of a fentanyl overdose, and there are people telling us that we should keep this open. We should keep this program open. It's not making a difference in anybody's life, right? It's not helping them get out of this where they find themselves.
Wow, that's amazing.
Now I understand that some people want to live in a motor home. I got that. We have places. We have lots of great facilities. We're mobile home parks. We've got. It does serve a good purpose. But when you're having a facility that's run by the county that ends up being an open air drug market, you've got that in San Francisco. You've got that in Los Angeles. You've got that in Oakland. I was in Oakland, CSAC, so California State Association of Counties, which is an association of all counties in the state. Our RCRC, which I talked about earlier, Rural County Representatives of California, only has 40 counties because they're considered rural. We're considered rural in that world. But CSAC is all counties, including the big guys. They had their big meeting in Oakland about 2 months ago. So I went up to the meeting, and I have never, there's a new drug on, I guess, that people are taking, Trank, where it basically just kind of freezes their body. So people just stand in one place for 45 minutes or an hour. They're unable to move. They're either on the ground, and there's bodies everywhere, and they're all alive. These are not dead people, but they're probably on their way to dying because their addiction is so out of control.
Is that like when you see, like I see where they're slumped over? It's like their legs are fine, but the rest of they're just limp, and they're just limp, standing there.
That's right.
At their hips.
And I saw probably 30 or 40 people like that in Oakland, California, under the freeways, because that's state property. So they all kind of gravitate to the state property.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really, I think, one of the biggest problems we as a society face right now is addiction and mental health problems.
John, what do you think? I mean, so you look in Tascadero, you look in Paso, and then you have Templeton. What prevents? I mean, the homelessness, like you have in Tascadero, homelessness in Paso. What prevents that from happening in Templeton?
Well, a lot of times it's location to services, right? So if they know that folks know that there's going to be food available, maybe a meal available, in the evening or lunchtime or breakfast time, they'll be closer to the services so they can walk to the services, and then they go back out to, a lot of times with it's the Salinas River. There have been, over the years, there have been moves to clean up down in the Paso riverbed, and a lot of those folks moved closer to San Miguel or down to Templeton. So we see that, but then as soon as they're done cleaning the riverbed, they kind of move back because they're closer to services. And it doesn't just necessarily, services don't mean like Echo homeless shelter. It could be a gas station, or it could be, which we're going to talk about, or it could end up being a 7-Eleven, McDonald's.
Something at 24-hour that, people are throwing away trash, food and stuff like that.
Yes.
How do you think the goats does that help to kind of, help the issue a little bit?
I think it does, because there's less places to hide, to be able to put up your tent and not be seen by people on the freeway. But one of my biggest fears is that somebody, and I've gotten calls and a lot of complaints, and I've gotten a letter from the city of Paso Robles on working with Caltrans to put a fence up to try to keep those people from walking across the freeway. Some of them I've seen and heard this, that they're stumbling across, so they're obviously under the influence of some narcotic or alcohol or whatever, and they're wandering onto the freeway at nighttime. And that's gonna. I remember we had in Templeton probably 4 or 5 years ago, we had a young lady who was a Paso high school student on the freeway who committed suicide, I guess. She stepped in front of a car under the vineyard I think it was the Vineyard or Los Tablas overpass. She was on the freeway, and I am sure the gentleman who hit her, she did die. I'm sure he's dealing with with all kinds of problems. Just reliving that in his mind, and it's really a tough thing. It's a tough thing for everybody. It shocked the community that somebody would end their life that way, and the same thing we deal with people with mental illness that are stepping in front of trains. I talked to a really interesting gentleman who dealt with youth suicide and mental health issues up in San Jose, and they had a high school up there that had, I think they called it a suicide cluster, where they had a number of students that stepped in front of a train at a high school up there and died, and how we're so lacking as a society in mental health availability for younger people, because they're dealing with some pretty serious problems. I mean, we did it to ourselves too a lot of times because of the shutdown, the COVID shutdown and things like that, and that really affected our young people. And so to me, that's one of the main things that I think our health department and our government should focus on, is making sure that we're dealing with the mental health crisis that we find ourselves in with people all over, and that includes the people in the riverbed.
Wow. Shoot, John, we could talk about this literally all day long.
This is a happy subject to talk
right?
about.
Yeah, well, originally, I mean, I didn't mean to go on a half an hour talk about that, but mainly about so District 1 supervisor. I mean, what exactly does that mean? What is all your governing? I mean, you have probably multiple hats that you wear in the county, in the North County here. But what exactly does that mean for, say, like me? I don't know what you do.
What we do is we do a lot of land use work. So we'll talk about the fueling station that we just recently approved. But we oversee the budget. So the county budget's somewhere in the neighborhood of $800 million, which is responsible for funding everything from the Sheriff's Department, CAL FIRE, which we contract with, but San Luis Obispo Fire. We also oversee and work with the health department, any of the health, the health activities and regs. A lot of times it's hearing from constituents and then communicating with the health department. We also work with planning and building, and then my favorite department, which is the Public Works Department, the guys that fix the roads during storms. All of that, we work on their budgets. We approve budgets for all of these different departments, over 20 different departments. The library system is part of that, which is another great department. We have really good departments that do a lot of things and services for people in the community. And we approve their budget, and then we do land use on that, and we work with them through what we call a CAO, which is a Chief Administrative Officer, and they oversee the entire county government and responsible for that. We don't micromanage these departments, but like I will, if somebody calls me and they'll say, Bitterwater Road, which is in my district, and they'll say, hey, we got a pretty big pothole, there's a couple cars down there and a house fell in, that kind of thing. We'll get on the horn with Public Works and make sure they are aware of it, and they usually get out there pretty quickly and fix those things. We had the Chimney Rock Road washout last year, and that took us a while. We kind of stepped in and made sure that the people that were stranded on the other side of the lake had food or had access to the grocery store, so we started a shuttle service across the lake to be able to get them their services that they need. Some of them had to evacuate so their kids could go to school and they could get to their jobs, and then we were able to get a temporary bridge in, which is still in and doing pretty well. And now we go into the planning portion of that and try to figure out how to put the road back together, which has been tough because it washed away. There was a lot of rain coming down there, and it overwhelmed the bridge and the culvert.
And how do you prepare for? I mean, obviously they're saying we're supposed to have
big storm coming tonight. Yeah, and then we're gonna have a day of sunshine, and then it's coming. So I just be prepared. Be prepared. Make sure that you know how if you're near a hill or that could slide down, water. Any of the things that could happen. Good drainage. Make sure your gutters are clearing. There's a lot of things you can do to make sure that you're prepared for some of the storms we're having. And these aren't storms. I'm not one of those people that believes that these storms are just suddenly happening in the last 10 years, because we've had storms for 100 years, 200 years. Some of them have been really big. I remember the stories about a storm in Paso. It went over the top of the bridge, and it has not gone over the top of the bridge. So we're doing pretty well right now. So.
Well, because they raised the bridge.
They did.
So last year it probably
well,
would have been underwater.
that one in Atascadero, got wiped out years ago, and they put in a really nice bridge.
So, John, let's talk about this. Obviously, this approval, or I don't even know if it's approval, but then it was denied. The comment or the petition to pull it, but the service station and 24-hour.
So it's a fueling station. Okay. So it was presented by the applicant, and it was to be a fueling station with gasoline. And then it was going to have a fast food restaurant component to it, a car wash component. I think that's probably me. That's it had a fast food component to it, and it had a store, a 24-hour convenience store. So they went before TAG, the Templeton Area Advisory Group, and they said, we don't, the neighbors got together and said, we don't like the fast food restaurant. So they removed the fast food restaurant. And then the same came back and said they removed the car wash. So there will be no car wash and no fast food restaurants. So what's left? And they, by the way, added, so it's a fueling station because they added 9 chargers, so EV chargers for electric vehicles. So they're going to have 9 chargers. They're going to have, I think, 8 gas pumps, and then a 24-hour store that's going to have a store. And so it went to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission did vote to approve it, to move it forward. And then a neighbor, who's a nice guy, he appealed it because he did not want the 24-hour service, and he did not want some signage. There were some signage issues on that, but it is zoned for that. And right next to it going in is a grocery store, or a building that could hold a grocery store, and a hotel. So it's in a commercial, kind of right off the freeway there on Los Tablas. And so it came to us on appeal. We heard from the community, and we do this. We have how the process works at our meetings is we have a presentation from the applicant, then we have a presentation from the opponent of the project who filed the appeal, the appellant, and then we have some public comment. And so we had, I think, 18 or 19 people, 20 people spoke. Majority of them, a thin majority, but a majority of them were for the application going forward. And we listened to everybody, and then we make a decision. And because it's a good project, it's in a commercially zoned area. So this is commercially zoned. It's not like we took residential property. This is commercially zoned. There's going to be a hotel, as I said, next door.
That's going to be across?
It's actually just up the street.
Okay.
So it's on the same side of the street as the hospital.
Before you get to the hospital.
Before you get to the hospital,
area.
And they're building it right now. So
okay.
You'll start to see some 2x4s, and the stick-built stuff's going up. Right, so you got the hotel, you got the grocery store, and then around the corner, it's across the street from the park and ride, and where the veterinarian is, and in that area is where the fueling center will be. And a number of people spoke about the people that work late at night, that work all night, the night shift. Brad, who used to own the trash service that we have, Midstate, he actually spoke about it and about how it would be, he likes the fact that it would be a 24-hour, ability to be able to buy a cup of coffee at nighttime, So to me, I thought it just made sense for the community. It will have a gas station. It will compete with, I think, the other gas station down the street, the Chevron station. And then it will have the EV charging too, which, as you know, takes, I don't have an EV car, but people tell me it takes 45 minutes to an hour to charge these things. And so, people are sitting there in their cars, or they can go into the store and get a cup of coffee or something to eat, while they wait for their charging to be done.
Huh. I didn't know about the grocery store.
Yeah. It's a space for one. I don't know if what's going in. We're dealing with, it was actually funny because when I first was elected, the number one issue that people wanted me to fix was the Trader Joe's parking lot.
Oh, geez, that's a whole nother subject.
And I said at the time, because it's private property, I'm sorry, but I can't fix it's private property. In this particular instance, I think allowing this, I think this actually will be good for the community. I don't think it's going to bring the arguments against, where there was a crime argument against, which it's around the corner from the CHP, and the sheriff's department is putting in, their co-located dispatch center just across the freeway at the sheriff's substation, which is going to be a great facility to help save lives in our community. And so there's that, and then I think the other one was the signage, and the signage is just going to be able, because you're not going to enter on Los Tablas, you're going to actually go either Bennett or the other street and come back around. So you should be no traffic.
Yeah, but do you think being right next to the highway patrol and do you think that really detours the crime from happening?
I do in our community. I wouldn't say that in Oakland,
right?
But I think in our community, we live in a pretty safe community if you compare it to other counties. Yes, we're having a spike in some instances of crime throughout the county, but we have incredible police departments in each of the 7 cities, and we have a great sheriff's department. I really do think that the sheriff's department is one of the top sheriff's departments in the state.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. 100%. Ian Parkinson is phenomenal as far as his support and what he gets done.
He's wonderful. We're very, very lucky to have Sheriff Parkinson.
Absolutely. But you don't think like that? We how school is in the morning time. School is at 3:30, 3 o'clock when you're trying. You can't get out of this town.
Yeah.
And so you don't think that, the hotel, I thought the hotel was going to be a little further down, but now it's going to be right next to each other with the fueling station?
It's closer to the medical building that's in between. There's a medical building in between the hotel where the hotel's being built and the hospital. So it's right there. It's going to have a pretty big parking lot, so I don't think, and it's going to have its own street to come off of, so it's not going to be held up to go into a driveway. You're going to pull into a street and then drive into the property. So I think it actually will flow pretty well. Now, we spend a lot of money. This county spends a lot of money on traffic studies to make sure that it doesn't happen. And I wasn't around, I wasn't on the board when they approved the Trader Joe's, but once again, there is a plan to kind of fix that circulation at the Trader Joe's on the streets around it. And they're still working on that. But that has not been, I drive a truck, I'm sure, so it's not a place that we visit very often because and I love Eric over there at Pier 46. It's a wonderful, wonderful place for your seafood, but it's tough for me to get in there.
Especially at during the daytime.
100%.
At night, you have to go at nighttime.
Yeah.
Like I went there last night and the semi was there backing into Trader Joe's and shut down anybody going in or out.
Right. Yeah, and it's good. That is one long backup that has to kind of weave in and out. It's only for the really good drivers, I think, too. So, but I agree with you. I mean, it just the way that the circulation plan works is just got to be fixed there. But
you don't think, or nobody thinks that there's going to be that much impact on traffic right there at the Las Tablas and what is that, Las Tablas and what's the Bennett
Way, yeah.
Right there? Mm-hmm. I mean,
there will be, I think there'll be people pulling in, but because of the way that they've got the driveways coming off of Las Tablas, most of the traffic is going up Las Tablas, not turning. So once it turns off, and the other thing too, it's not a truck stop. There's not going to be, the big rigs are not coming in there, right? The closest truck stop we have is the San Paso one, is just north of, which is a real truck stop, right? And so that this is not that big of a footprint. Gosh. And the other thing that they did was they did increase the size of the holding tanks for the diesel and the fuel, and so that means less tanker truck trips into this facility to fill it back up.
And this is supposed to be projected to start construction now next couple months.
It's been approved, so I don't know when they get their permit, but it's been approved. So
just in the last.
Remember the hotel was approved quite a long time ago before I was on the board, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's rolling now. So it took them a while to put it together.
Jump through all the hoops and do the stuff that they need to do.
Uh-huh.
And do you think, so obviously you got the hotel, now we've got the 24-hour convenience store, fueling station, and then you have the county dispatch going in Templeton. So everybody's looking at going, what the heck is
Yeah.
What's our supervisors doing? They're just letting everything come in to Templeton. We're changing Templeton.
On the co-located dispatch center, which I did not agree with the Templeton Area Advisory Group. They did not support that. But when the sheriff stands up and tells me that this dispatch center will save lives in North County, I am not going to be voting against it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think it's going to only have, I think it has 25 jobs that'll be working out of the dispatch center. It's on the freeway, right on the freeway, and I think it's good for the community. And the same thing goes, and I believe my neighbors and the people that I talk to, I get a lot of support from people in the community when they tell me about certain, because people have no problem telling me what they think about a project, which is good. That's what I want to hear. Right, especially when I'm at the grocery store or down at the deli, you tell me, right? So, but I will tell you that these projects, I believe, will benefit the majority of the community, and to me, that's what really matters. Does this make their life a little bit better? And I do think the fueling station will do that.
Well, like I said, everybody has opinions, of course.
And I'm glad for that. I welcome that. I said that at the meeting. We had people that were against it. I've sat through meetings. I remember we did a meeting on bringing fuel. There was a discussion about training oil down to the refinery we have a refinery in our county that's now shut down, but it was down in Napomo on the Napomo Mesa. It'd been there for like 100 years, and they were going to bring fuel down on trains, which they right now bring fuel on our train system from the San Ardo area, and also they take it north and then they take it south. And the ones that come south come through Templeton, and they go down to the Los Angeles refineries in Los Angeles. For the vehicles, but they were going to bring it down to the Napomo Mesa refinery, and we had 2 days of meetings because everybody brought out their people. So the people that were for it came out, and we had like 250 speakers. I was chairman of the board, and so we just sat there listening to public comment for 2 days. We had so many people in the chambers that we had to open up the Fremont movie theater next door and project the meeting on a screen so people could sit in there and watch it.
Oh, wow.
But it went on and on and on, and we talked about it. And they used to tell me that they said the same thing with Diablo. Diablo Canyon and the nuclear power plant, they had days of meetings to land use to allow it in our county. And now it's in our county. None of the things that they said actually have happened. And we have probably close to 2,000 families whose livelihood depends on Diablo Canyon staying open. But so I want to hear from people. I like public comment is actually one of my favorite things because I'm not necessarily the person that has always wanted to be elected to something, because I like to be able to hear other people's opinions and then base my decision upon their opinions. And to me, that's what, does the community want it? And I would tell you that I believe in talking to people, and not at the hospital and talking to people on the street. The majority of the people that I talk to think that a 24-hour convenience store at a fueling station is not a bad idea.
John, that's an interesting subject as far as the public comment. So have you ever been experienced to where public comment has actually changed your decision?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
How so?
Well, I give you the example, and this was before I was elected, but there was a whole discussion about a mental health center on Los Tablas. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
And they were going to, and I went to a number of meetings, and I'm a big proponent of people getting services like mental health services or health services that you can that we offer to be able to help people live better lives. But in talking to the community and working with them, because that was further up Los Tablas, and it was going to be across the street, I think from kind of right next to some houses. When I say right next to, 40 feet or 50 feet or whatever the number was. I can't remember.
I think it was like right across from Radiology Associates.
Right in there. So I was supportive of it until I talked to a number of my community members with their concerns, and I was like, you know what? I think you're right. And I changed. I actually wrote an editorial in the Tribune about it, about not being against it, because I just thought it was after listening to the community, I thought it was the wrong place for it. And so, this particular fueling station is right on the freeway. It's right there, right? It's on the southern part. And so I just thought that this was also a good location for that. But I think that if they had moved the, and by the way, the mental health office did get approved. I was not on the board at the time, but it did get approved, and it still hasn't been built to this day.
So that's approved down there as well on Los Tablas.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it never got built. I think the gentleman that owned it lived up in Carmel Valley, and I don't think they just decided not to build it.
But it's still there.
The empty lot's still there.
If they want to.
Yeah.
Down the road. So you really can't win no matter what you do, right? I mean, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So
there's going to be somebody that's against it. But,
right.
But I don't villainize the people. That if they're against it or they're for it, I don't, I'm not going to be the one, supervisor that goes out there and just, trashes them, because I think that they're coming from it, from a position of empathy. I just think that we have a difference of opinion.
Because a lot of these outtakes from the community is more emotional, kind of like the convenience store, lights, mostly like the housing, obviously the house, Peterson Ranch, there's a big community.
It is.
High district community, and now now it's happening, fuel station lights, stuff like that. So a lot of that comes from emotion. It doesn't affect me at all, but I assume from the residents there, huh?
Yeah, and I tell you this, the landowner made the decision, the developer made the decision to take about 30% of that property and landscape it with trees to be able to stop some of the, mitigate some of the problems that might occur with light or sound or noise, from a 24-hour fueling station. But they really gone out of their way to try to make it better. And they worked with TAG on that. That's something that TAG had asked, they kept making the changes. They made a number of changes that TAG asked for. Said get rid of if there's too much noise with a car wash system, a U-serve car wash system. So they removed it. There's there's the fast food restaurant will have, too many cars, attracts too many cars. So they did that. So at what point do you finally say, okay, they've done enough, to mitigate it, to move it forward? And I found too that it was just one thing after the other. It was like, okay, do this, now do this, now do this. And when they give up 30% of the property to be able to put in additional landscaping to make sure that, it mitigates some of possible problems with it. I think that they're making a good faith effort to actually try to be good neighbors.
John, I think with you, what kind of is real important, for people to really understand is that, you have a family, you live in this community.
I do.
Your kids go to school, in this community, you raise your family here. And it's not just somebody moving into our area and want to make decisions and want to see Templeton, or the North County grow into this, Carmel Valley, this, big tourist, type place. And so I'm sure you get a lot of, some backlash from, just being a resident here, that you're like, hey, I like you said, you feel like it's a benefit to our area and our community, and probably taxes. I'm sure taxes play a role into that. So, like I said, it's I'm sure it's a hard hat to wear, sometimes being as you are in the community.
Well, it is, and one of I give you an example that of something that I thought we had done a really good job on. There are a number of people, because of the Paso Robles water basin, there are a number of small family farms, generational farms that have no access to water. And they can't grow anything on their land. They might have 100 acres of property, and they have grown, things over the years. But when the urgency ordinance came in and they weren't allowed to get access to water, they still haven't been able. This has been 15 years, supposed to be temporary, 15 years, I think, that they haven't been able to grow anything on their property. So Supervisor Lynn Compton, Supervisor Arnold, and myself put together an ordinance that would allow them to apply for 25 acre-feet of water to be able to grow additional fruits and vegetables on their property or run some cattle on their property. And we went through the year of EIR and we did all the work. And then as soon as Supervisor Compton lost in this and Supervisor Gibson, Ortiz-Legg, and Paulding came in, they rescinded it. And so they stopped it before it even started. So we still have people in our community that are locked out on their property. They're paying their taxes on it, but they can't grow things on their property. And this idea came from a gentleman who I thought was a very nice farmer who grows tomatoes. And he does 2 acres of tomatoes or 3 acres of tomatoes. And he'd like to grow some additional tomatoes because he takes his, believe it or not, he takes his tomatoes every week up to the ferry building in San Francisco to the farmer's market and sells his tomatoes. And he usually sells out because his tomatoes are so prized there. And so he wanted access to some additional water. And we were trying to get it for him. And then they rescinded it at the beginning of this last year, right after they got the board majority. And to me, that's one of the reasons why I've run again, is to try to figure out ways to be able to get that put back into place, to allow small family farms in our district and the 5th district to have access to water, so they can grow some fresh fruits and vegetables. And I will tell you that I've heard from all sides on that issue, right? Everybody's come and said, oh, you shouldn't give them any water, right? And then people say, we need water. We need water to be able to make this land work for our family. And to me, it's a no-brainer. It's like, yes, you should have access to water, because we have some larger farmers in our community that take a lot more water than 25 acre feet, and it would be great. I mean, it's available. It's not going to, I think we probably had 10 or 15 of these family farms that were going to apply for it. So you're talking, 500 acre feet total, let's just say, it would be no problem to be able to get them this water so they could grow. And I still, from a common sense standpoint, it just makes so much sense to me, to be able to help somebody. But there are still people in the community that don't want it to happen.
It doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't they want?
I know.
They're providing for their own.
Yeah.
They're benefiting the community tax. The community tax board as well.
Very much so.
So, and then you look at some of these big, huge wineries when they come in. Of course, that's always the talk as far as the water basin. They're going to have millions of water. I don't know what they are, but like Wonderful, is it Wonderful? I think that was a big talk here a few years back.
Yep.
As far as on the water draw, and as far as our base and what they're depleting that.
Yeah, and look, it's a shared basin. Everybody shares it. Everybody puts their straw in it's a basin, and the beauty of our basin is it all rolls north, which is, people don't understand. It all ends up in Monterey County at some point. That water all ends up in Monterey County because it's all just like the Salinas River. We're at a higher elevation, and it's going to Monterey Bay. And so, for me, the thing is, we need to figure out how to recharge, get some recharge in here that the county does, not private recharge, but recharge the basin, slow down the Salinas River, allow that to get into the basin. If we can slow it down so it can percolate down and recharge with that, and then allow these small family farmers to be able to have access to some water so they can make their land work for them.
How would you do that, John? How would you slow down? I mean, would you dam it up?
They have they call them bladder dams or beaver dams. That all of that slows down. One of the ideas, though, that we've been working on now for 8 years is actually to when the Santa Margarita Dam, so the Salinas River Dam, same thing, was built by the Army Corps of Engineers during World War II. It was designed to actually have twice the capacity that it has right now. And they were going to put some gates on it where it tops out. They were going to put some gates on it so it could have twice as much capacity. And so I've been to Washington, D.C. 3 times with county staff to lobby for the Army Corps of Engineers to seismically retrofit, because this dam is in the same shape it was in 1942 or 3, whenever it was built. And it was built in 1 year. It was put together in 1 year. And that's the beginning of the Salinas River. So double the capacity by putting the gates in it, retrofit it, and then give it away to the county of San Luis Obispo so we can control the water that comes out of there. We could take some of that water if we have extra capacity, and we could figure out a way to be able to recharge the basin with it, either along the river, and have it water settle down, and then, dump some more out and be able to run, when we need it the most.
Wow. Because obviously that was a big talk last year because of all the water that was lost. There's nothing to catch it.
All going to Monterey Bay.
or out to the ocean because there's
Yeah.
nothing to be caught
Yeah.
for the farmers, for community, for everything. So that's why
And it's like Nacimiento,
Yeah.
right? Nacimiento is owned by Monterey County. They paid for it and they built it. It's their water. We have an allocation. We put in a pipeline, and that brings water to Templeton. It brings water to Atascadero. It brings water to Paso Robles, and we use that water. But still, a majority of that water, goes up the river to help the farmers of the Salinas Valley in Monterey County.
and that's that big NARMAC, which is
NARMAC wants to keep the water in there. Yep.
And that's been an ongoing fight. I know they
Yes.
just was in court last week about that. So, I mean,
Yeah, and there's an interesting issue there too, because Monterey County wants to build a tunnel between San Antonio, which is in Monterey County, and also through Nacimiento, because Nacimiento fills up faster. So it fills up really fast. It'll probably be full here by next week. If you have a show, it'll probably be full. But and the problem is it's going to go underneath. The tunnel's going to go underneath some private property owners that have domestic wells that take water from their domestic wells to be able to service their homes. And so if they test it and it let's say it fouls one of those wells, that family's not going to have access to well water, and they're not going to have water. So I've asked, and NARMAC was actually the ones that enlightened me on it. They really wanted the county of Monterey to indemnify the families up top, that are going to be over the top of this. So if something happens to their well, they'll figure out a way to get them water. For those families. And so far, we're still working with Monterey County to try to get that done.
wow.
But I understand where they're coming from. I think it's right that if they take water, leave the water in there for as long as possible in the lake, so people can recreate, because that's all those houses there. That's there. That's why they're there. Is because they're on a lake and they use it to water ski or fish or do wakeboard, do whatever people do.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, with the recreation part of it alone,
Yeah.
Not to mention, Heritage Ranch, Oak Shores and all the communities
Yes.
that live around there. I mean, obviously that's what draws the value of their properties and homes is the water being in there when it's dry.
That's exactly right.
And then you got, the grocery store out there, pizza place. I mean, so it's a thriving community. And with the way that house prices are just in Templeton, Atascadero, and Paso, it's almost affordable, for, young couples to move out to the lakes.
It's a wonderful, the people I go out there a lot, and I used to do a lot more meetings than COVID hit, but we're starting them back up. But it's just a wonderful community. It really is. The people out there at Oak Shores, Heritage Ranch, they're involved in their community. They care about their community. And then even if you go across the lake, Running Deer and any of those, Cal Shasta, any of those communities, there's a real sense, of community out there.
And that's your district as well?
It is, yes.
Because over there, they're so spread out, but there's a lot of people over there.
Oh, there are.
And from the lake, you kind of see it. Obviously, 3-4 years ago when the big fire was over there and, across from the launch ramp there, and wiped out all the homes, a lot of the homes, but there's a lot of people back there.
Yeah, they're wonderful people. I'll tell you, they were pretty scared, which rightly so. When the road went out, when Chimney Rock went out, because they didn't know how they were going to get anywhere, get things. There's cars. There's a couple guys who had really nice sports cars, Porsches, I think, and there was maybe even a Lamborghini back there, and it got stuck out there for 3 months, and they had no place to drive it because they couldn't get out of on Chimney Rock.
That's crazy.
And so once we got the bridge up, and we got a first dirt bridge up, to be able to then move some things, and then we got this little had the metal one brought in and got the crane big enough to get it on there and took care of it and built it out. But it was a crazy time, and those folks were scared, and so I went over and had a little town hall meeting at Running Deer and talked to probably 75 families there and how we were going to be able to help them, and it was everything from trash service to food, to the school kids going to school.
Wow.
So Yeah.
John, you know what? I mean, we've been here for an hour, so,
Yeah.
I mean, we could sit here all day long.
Anytime.
I appreciate you coming on.
No, I appreciate the show. I'm a big fan of your show. Obviously, my son's been on with the football team, but the Coach Crow, what a great program and the great interviews you did with him. You're really good at interviewing people. I love it.
Well, definitely, I shoot from the hip. That's for sure.
Good.
So let's talk about enlighten. Let's get away from the politics. Templeton, your boy, was a stud in football. I mean, what was that like watching him play? I mean, he went from starting football in the 8th grade, I believe, right? 7th or 8th grade?
7th or 8th grade, yeah. He did flag football, through Templeton Rec a couple years, and then he got into it, and then he got on the youth team, and he was really upset because he was yellow striped because he's a big kid, right? So they, put him on the line, but he couldn't carry the ball, because he, and so. But he really fell in love with the sport, and all his friends, his friendship circles, all football, all those seniors that were there, and he's, he just was. I mean, he really took to it, and I think too, he just enjoyed the. He's a little shy. He's going to see me say this, and he's going to be upset with me. But he's a little shy, So the fact that he could put a helmet on and kind of tune out the crowd and just do his job, I think was beneficial to the way he played. And then, getting onto a team like Templeton in the COVID year, he was a freshman, and they brought him up to play varsity, because they didn't have a JV team that year. And so he did. He played. I don't know if he didn't play very many games, but he learned the system. Coach Crow, and his system is incredible, and it's a great program. And it's not to say take away from any of the other programs. Atascadero has a great program. Paso's rebuilding their program. So we have great sports, and that to me, youth sports is the key to mental health, fitness. I believe in our high schools and our junior highs.
And I think a lot of times that's where sometimes where these kids that don't have like the discipline or don't have that, parental figure that, they almost want that. They almost want to be told no. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, like I coach the youth, and you almost see that like sometimes on these kids to where they gravitate towards the authority. They gravitate to the coach that's yelling at them because they don't get that.
Well, and I think too, this because I think Johnny was on your team at some point when you were coaching. But I tell you, I just think that it's the way that you, and I say this as a former camp counselor and also a high school and college athlete because I played soccer in high school and college. I'll tell you that that it's the way that you coach them. It's the way that you communicate ideas and expectations, and that allows them to, develop discipline, develop the ability to be able to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and show up for zero period
right.
and lift weights, or when all of their other friends might be sleeping in. Or, in the case of Walker Craven, come back from getting run over by a truck and now getting accepted this last week into the United States Naval Academy. I mean, to me, this is a program, the football program that I have seen through our family has changed the direction of children's lives for the better.
Absolutely. What's Johnny's plans after high school?
He's going to go to college.
Yeah.
He's applied to, I want to say 17 colleges. I ended up paying for all the applications, so I know for a fact that he applied to 17 schools, and he's gotten into. He hasn't heard from all of them yet, but he's running pretty well right now on the number of acceptances.
Is he looking at still playing some ball?
I don't know about that. He's dealing with some issues on his some sore muscles, but sometimes that takes a little while to get. Having been there, it takes a little while to get over, and then I think he'll make that decision.
Because that's always like, I know when my boys, because had the girls come through, been coaching, and then that senior night or that last night when the playoff game was lost, and as a parent, it kind of changes you too.
It does.
Because you've been the biggest supporter that they could possibly get. Mm-hmm. And your career ended as well.
Yeah.
So how did that make you feel?
It was tough. It was tough to get over that last game and the way it all ended. But Johnny had a good run. 4 years he lettered. Last couple years he was all league. And I mean, he had, he got, he had some ups and downs though, but I think that the ups were there were a lot more, good experiences with the program, and the teams that they played against too. And just to be part of a team like that, where you come together and build from the ground up, and then you're able to actually learn the system and run the program and be successful. I mean, it will go, I think, a long way to making him a better person.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on.
You bet.
And appreciate your service, that you do. I mean, every day is a battle for you. I mean, you're like on the gridiron every single day.
I am, but I tell you, once again, I mean, just like I said with football, I learned a system, and the system's working, and we're trying to make it work for everybody.
Well, this is an election year for you.
Yes, it is.
Right? So You're going to start that campaign in here?
Well, actually, no one filed against me. So I'm on the ballot. I appreciate anybody's vote, but I'm the only one on the ballot in the 1st District. So
awesome.
I should be good, but I'm looking forward to serving the constituents, the community, and all the community members in the 1st District for the next 4 years.
Well, let's maybe try to get you on every month.
I'd be happy to do it.
So that way we can kind of spearhead some of these, issues that maybe people aren't making it to these meetings, or, because you obviously hear a lot, so then that way we can spearhead those and, maybe get some public comment questions, say, hey, John, we got this, question. Hey, what do you think about this? And I think that would be kind of cool, to kind of help to bring more light into our North County of what's happening, versus what you hear.
Right.
Because there's obviously a lot of differences between what's the reality and speculation.
Yeah,
so,
I completely agree.
Perfect.
I love it.
Awesome, John. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and appreciate your service, and appreciate everything you do for the North County.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Randy.
Well, there you have it, guys. Hey, make sure you guys tune in. Hopefully every month we can get John Peschong back on here, and we can talk about all the stuff in the North County, and appreciate him for coming on and telling us about everything that he does and what else we can find out. But as always, guys, we can't do this without you and our sponsors. We'd like to thank Escalar Wines, Wine Travelers Hideaway, Visit Atascadero, 805 Customs, Pacific 805 Spas, Hanson Enterprises, Airflow Filter Services, Kennedy Club Fitness, Borhone Auto Center, and Story Termite Pest Control, guys. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Hi, this is Dave Story, small game hunter with Story Termite and Pest. We're a full-service termite and pest control company. From rodents to termites, we can take care of all your pest control needs. Call today. We can tailor a pest control program that will meet your needs and budget. Contact us at 805-460-0650 or at storytermite.com. Remember, we don't have customers, we have friends.
Hi, welcome to Kennedy Club Fitness, where we have something for everyone. We have weights, cardio, group exercise classes, racquetball, basketball, swimming, and pickleball coming soon. Here at Kennedy, we're committed to health, wellness, and community. Stop by any of our 4 locations: Paso Robles, Atascadero, San Luis Obispo, and Arroyo Grande, or check out our website at kennedyclubs.com.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Atascadero isn't your standard getaway. We're unique, just like you. We're growing, transforming, and figuring it out as we go. We're a town filled with innovators, artists, makers, and game changers. We're a little bit country, a little bit funky, and always authentic. We're here for your good times, your slow times, and your changing times. We are all in a